we'll have a bit of a question and answer session. I'm actually a bit disappointed. There's only one early adopter in this room.
I may have given them a bum stew about where to ask the questions, because the questions that are attached to our session, there's about 30 questions.
Oh, really?
Yeah, or maybe not 30, but...
Well,
so if you go to Medical Breakthroughs and Future Practice Work stuff and go to the questions, which now seems to have disappeared.
That'll be right.
They were there a second ago. You could see all the questions.
Personally, I'm convinced that all of our AI is thoroughly infiltrated and bugged. And I think my view is actually that there's reds under the bed everywhere, and that's part of our problems and why we have so much difficulty in implementing technology. However, that's my personal paranoia.
You hear that?
What I might do is to start off with a question for you, John, from here, and then I'll borrow your phone and possibly not give it back to you. But the question that I did get on the app here is, John, you asked about private practice and the amount of private practice, and I think you understandably were a little surprised to see how little physician private practice actually does have engagement with technology. That actually reflects very much our understanding at this stage. However, in the public health system and in the way that the public health system tries to interact with private health, particularly with general practice and primary care, I suspect the question is, do you know whether that's different? And do you think that's going to change?
Sure. So it was purely selfish motivation, really, that I asked that question focused on private practice. I've spent the last 4 years in the public sector. In New South Wales, of the 240 or so hospitals that have a digital record, about 240 of them have a digital record. Sorry, out of the 240 hospitals in New South Wales, they all have a digital record. In another 3 to 5 years, they will all have that digital record, including medication management and all components. Do I have to unlock my phone for you? All of the components of the record. At the moment, it's limited to patient documentation, test ordering, results reporting, but it does include discharge summaries and most of the notes that you would generally expect to have in a record. So New South Wales, highly digitised. Queensland, smaller number of hospitals. They have a more complete stack of functionality, as we heard from some of the talks this morning. And they definitely have a program to roll out to the majority of their larger facilities and medium-sized facilities, but they're just beginning that journey, so not so much in Queensland at the moment. Victoria is generally a basket case, so that's the same as always. Victoria is interesting because they have a lot more independence in each of their local health district equivalents. And they're even down to facility level. Each hospital may have a different system, so that's why you see a mixture of, Epic in some locations, and I think TrackCare InterSystems. There's a whole lot of different, and Cerner, of course, different EMRs there, so they don't have a systemised approach to the whole state. That may change now with the greater interest in digital strategy, with Neville Board coming on board there, and that may change. In the smaller states by hospital number, Western Australia, South Australia, Northern Territory, they're very rapidly becoming digital. So the reason I didn't ask about the government, public sector digitisation is they're all doing it. And with the My Health Record becoming opt-out, they will be sending as much data as they can into the My Health Record. Already New South Wales sends all the discharge summaries, op reports, pathology results, imaging results. Soon the images themselves will be accessible. So it's really, the public sector is doing a lot of this. Now, we still have big gaps. Private sector hospitals, nowhere near as advanced. And I'm sorry, I wasn't surprised at that response of the practitioners here. I've actually been quoted as being quite irritated at the discussion about the My Health Record and the Australian Digital Health Agency. It's all about GPs. And I just think, who cares? Like 90% of the GPs have a digital system. It's one of two, Medical Director of Best Practice. There's a few others out there, but they're sort of done. And as long as those software companies connect to the My Health Record or connect to a secure messaging system, they're sweet. But who are they talking to? Like, what's the point of secure messaging if the GPs can't send a referral letter to a specialist because the specialists don't use the system at all? And this confirmed that we aren't using those systems for that. And to me, that's a really big barrier to effective use of the My Health record, of secure comms. We're sort of wasting our time talking about it until all the parties involved in caring for a patient, and there's lots of them, are able to use these systems. I hope that answered that question, because I saw that question in there. Yeah, I was just trying to turn off the auto off function, so just give me 2 seconds to do that. Here you go. And then I've just got to turn on the app again. There you go. Shouldn't turn off now.
Thank you very much. Okay, so it's always difficult to do this on the fly, as you would understand, and I want to make sure that we ask questions of all of our guests. And perhaps I'm just going to ad hoc one while I'm sorting my brain out, because I haven't yet got to the point where I've got an implanted chip that's assisting me. But with respect to genomics, what you've shown, and it was interesting that 2 of our panel have talked about Moore's law. You've shown that the cost of basically doing a whole genome analysis has come down. You also mentioned that there is a rapid increase in the amount of diseases and our ability to identify gene variations, associations with diseases, appears to be growing probably at a similar rate as Moore's law, in terms of, you know, a few years ago there was probably maybe 50 single gene types that were associated, and now there are hundreds, and clearly in another few years there's likely to be thousands. Do you see that there will come to be a point where each individual will, from birth effectively, that our medical systems, our clinical systems, will be able to say, okay, this person has these risks, and that our personalised healthcare will start at that point?
When I was a student, I was told that it was impossible to sequence the human genome. It just couldn't be done. And even if you could, you couldn't store it. And even if you could, you couldn't read it back in again. And clearly they were wrong, and I think my teachers probably didn't have enough foresight or vision or imagination. So I know whatever answer I give you, I'll be guilty of the same. But in a 30-year, 35-year practicing lifetime, assuming you can diagnose 1 patient a day at a genomic level, you can only treat 7,500 patients. There are 30 people with the training in the country. You're looking at a tiny drop, quite insufficient to be able to do it. So either we're going to have a very inequitable system where very few people have access to genomics, and as I tried to show you, the capacity to sequence and the falling cost of that means that's not going to happen, or else we're going to have to work out a different way of interpreting and diagnosing. The algorithms are almost there. There are already a couple of programs that will get within a few percent of being as good as a human expert, and within a year they will be mainstream. So the problem of sequencing is solved. The problem of interpretation is nearly solved, and if you give me 2 or 3 years, it's solved. So what is the optimal time then to do it? That question is being asked. The evidence is not yet in, but you can make some reasonable assumptions that for pharmacogenomics, for any of genomics, the earlier in life the better, but there may be some ethical reasons why you don't want to have a minor have access to their genome, because the autonomy of the individual, they might regret or change the decision that their parents might make. So some people will have it done at birth or as child because they've got a disease or a condition that may be helped. Many people might choose not to do it till a young adult. The second opportunity is preconception, before you plan a family, because once you've got the genome for that purpose, you've got it then for your own healthcare from that point onwards. And the third is, we all get a little older every year. We all take medications from our 30s, our 40s, our 50s, and polypharmacy after that. So probably before age 50 is the optimal time to have your pharmacogenomics. So with today's very limited vision, I would say that young adult, preconception, and before you're 50 are 3 magic sweet spots. It'll be interpreted by an automated algorithm, and with time, when it becomes commonplace and you share it on Facebook, eventually everyone will, but we're not quite at that point.
Thank you for that. And I might comment that as just someone who's marginally over 50, which might surprise some of you out there, I did think that it's probably time I checked out which statin I should be on. Okay, if I could ask you a question, and this was an early question, but I think that you referred to this but didn't go into it in depth. Do you think that doctors one day will be potentially replaced by an AI robot who will do a whole body scan and a management plan? And I suspect will probably also have the genomic information with them.
I know that there are people trying to develop a tricorder, which does a lot of, the thing from Star Trek, you just wave it at someone and tells you what ails them. We've seen sort of surgical pods in movies where you just get in there and the machine looks after you. Like, you think probably technically feasible a long way down the track. But I think in the short term, it's going to be medical professionals, human beings, augmented by tech. Because I think the big problem that you face is a productivity issue. I mean, the number of doctors that are kind of eked out of the system and by the colleges, is not growing at a huge rate, right? I think it's capped, controlled. Population is getting older at a rapid rate, so the amount of investigations that need to be done is going to go up. You can pinch doctors from other countries, which I think we do. I'm not sure it's a particularly moral thing to be doing. So how do we get more done with the medical professionals that we already have? And I think that's where automation can help. In the first instance, it's going to be AIs. It's going to be AIs looking at data. Robots, which are actually physically doing stuff, that will happen, but it'll start with simple things. It might be a robot that's going to move an ultrasound probe over a body rather than have a human ultrasound tech do that. It might be doing palpations. I think it's going to start off in simple little labour-saving things. You're going to win in cost, you're going to win in reliability, and it's going to be creeping featureism. Like cruise control in your car. Like once upon a time in your car, everything was manual, right? To wind the windows and all of that. And now you've got more and more things that assist you in driving. Maybe in 10 years' time, we'll have completely autonomous cars. I think it's going to be the same in your profession. More and more little labour-saving things. It means you get more done.
I'd certainly like to be able to get more done on my way to work instead of driving the damn car through the traffic. Okay. John's actually asked a question of you, Leslie, about how do we keep genomic data secure from malicious actors, and that perhaps refers to the Reds under the bed, but it raises big issues.
I don't think you ever will. I mean, if you look at all the publicised data leaks that are happening in all sorts of corporations that you think should know better, big financial institutions that you think would have this under control, and they clearly don't. I think any data you put somewhere, someone's going to get it sooner or later. It's very pessimistic, but I don't think we're not very good at this.
That's certainly our view. In corporate digital ICT environments, whether it's eHealth New South Wales or a company like DXC or wherever, I haven't started working with them, but anybody who knows enough about cybersecurity knows that everything will be broken. And that's why I ask, because one of the challenges is this information is so precious, and you talk about patients, like even the patients may not want to know, or you don't tell them, the people with the greatest right to it. How do we, I'm asking this problem myself, how do we make this safe for people?
One can take effort to ensure that the identification is removed from the genome. One of the problems, though, with the big data is it's possible to re-identify. And it's surprising how few probes one needs to do of the genome before it's possible with high probability to reassociate that genome with the individual. There are a number of reference genomes. They happen to come from Mormon families in the States, so three-generation pedigrees who volunteered their DNA. And studies have been done that if you know the postcode and a few dozen questions you can ask of a de-identified database, provided one of your relatives has been sequenced somewhere in the world, it's possible to relink you back to that family. Yeah. On the other hand, the information in your genome, we tend to protect it from insurance companies, but then if the incentive for insurance companies to be able to provide some disadvantage to you in having that information, if that is removed, and then if the advantage in having your genome available, because if you've got a condition that's placing you at risk of a condition, a preventable, medically actionable, well, your relatives will benefit from that too. So we find that a minority of people who come to us and we discuss it with them say, look, thank you very much, it's not for me, we respect that view. The majority of those who come have a very informed discussion. About 10 or 15% of people say they won't proceed unless we agree to give them a copy of their genome on a hard drive and agree that they should have access to it in the cloud thereafter. So that's a condition of their proceeding to test. So far, more than 90% have agreed to allow us to limit our ability to de-identify with current technology and to allow their genome to be shared. It's because the altruistic motive of knowing that their genome has allowed a diagnosis to be made in them, they want to help other people in the community and in the medical world. So our experience has been the vast majority of people are very altruistic and very willing to share. A minority say not for them, we respect that view, and a surprisingly large number of people, their medical carers assume they don't want it, but the individual says, actually, I want my genome, and I respect your view but if you don't give it to me, I'll go to the laboratory, would you please give me my genome? And that's a condition of proceeding with the testing.
Just cheating a bit here, there was a question about, this is a session on disruption, we've never mentioned blockchain. The blockchain's not really a disruptive technology yet, and you could argue, like, public key encryption, anybody interested in that? I mean, that is the foundation of just about everything we do on the internet, and yet we don't consider that disruptive, and blockchain's kind of in that category. But in terms of controlling your genome and who can access it and when they can access it, and having the patient be in charge of who, like, at the foundational data level, so they can copy your whole genome, it's useless to them unless they have the blockchain keys, etc., to unlock that segment to answer that question. That's one of the areas where we think blockchain actually might be particularly relevant in healthcare, to allow granular control over parts of your genome when it's stored in some data warehouse that we know we can't 100% protect. So just because that person asked a question about blockchain, we're certainly aware of it, and that's one of the high potential areas we think.
Follow up there, it's although you're a subset of your genome that allows you to see how you differ from the reference genome, the average person will comfortably fit on a USB stick, your overall genome takes half a terabyte. So before one applies blockchain and you've got an immutable chain at that point, you probably want to secure the index to the genome rather than the whole genome.
Yeah, agreed.
Which means somewhere there must be a de-identified genome if you're transferring the problem to a different point in the chain.
Yeah, we could go on for hours on this one.
About the police interest in genomic data, which is, I was quite surprised by that. So if everyone's putting their whole DNA out there, even if it's anonymized, it's going to be a wonder for law enforcement.
The criminals have already worked out how to use it too. So in ways we can't imagine.
Well, I did, and I don't know whether it was apocryphal, but I did hear on the news the other day that in the USA, the police had managed to track down a killer because a number of their relatives had gone on to an ancestral DNA database. So the future is here. Just in terms of artificial intelligence, and this is a question for both of you guys, and it comes from Hawke's Bay, and it's always predictable that Hawke's Bay has some side questions and great minds. Although I did hear this morning also a massive outbreak of Campylobacter, but that's another story. Might a robot book me for a colectomy when what I really wanted was some cough mixture?
So the word robots are used here, and really I'd say, I'm going to be pedantic and say it's an AI. Often they get called bots or chatbots, but they're not robots, it's an AI system. And yeah, they're not infallible, nor probably is a human phone receptionist. So, you know, as we make machines more intelligent, more imaginative, more creative, we also admit the possibility that they will make mistakes. And this is a cutting edge area in AI at the moment, is what's called explainable AI. So you have a conversation with the AI and it takes away something from that conversation, makes some pronouncement or some prediction, and you want to be able to say, why did you say that? What was your reasoning process to come up with that? And you would be able to tell me your reasoning process to come up with that conclusion. The moment AIs don't, they're a black box, data goes in, stuff comes out. There is no introspection or reasoning mechanism. And that's really important going forward, and that's a lot of people interested in this problem at the moment. Not much progress so far, but it'll happen.
I mean, as a technologist, you could argue that speech is a flawed communications methodology, mainly due to the multiple ways you can interpret the same words. And English is probably the worst language of all for that reason. One of the things you can do, though, if you think about the example I played there, the product of that conversation was an appointment, which of course can go into your diary and you can see, oh, bugger, the appointment's for the wrong restaurant. I better go and ask Siri to go and do it with a different restaurant or the same one again and try and get a better result. So there are other methodologies for feedback, and because it's AI inside a computing environment, we can force those. Forcing functions can be built into an AI, whereas you can't force the human nurse to always ask the doctor, did you mean the left arm? Because I heard you say left. Did you really mean left? No, I meant their face. You know, you got me completely wrong. So we know that good communication is about confirming reception, not just about transmission. And yet in human practice, we very rarely actually do that all the time. Whereas with a computing AI system, if we design it that way, we can actually choose to enforce that it always confirms. So it plays back to you. Actually, you asked me to do a colonoscopy. No, I wanted whatever the other option was, cough mixture. So there are some possibilities there, but what interests me is that we're not talking about this as a profession. We're not talking about, well, how do we think the AI should be constructed in healthcare? What are the things we can learn from the early mistakes in the early innovations that aren't yet in? And don't worry, that recording and the two others that I had there, which are readily available on the internet, if you Google duplex is the name of the technology, has already created a whole hive of discussion about the ethical ramifications and should computers announce that they're a computer when you're talking to them, and you know, yes, is it a form of deception? Absolutely. So there's a lot of discussions, but I think medicine as an entire profession needs to start talking about, well, who's responsible when the AI gives us some advice or makes a decision and we act on it and it's flawed? And you know, there's a whole host of not just ethical ramifications, but practical, real world, how are we going to deal with this? And I think we should be owning that conversation. And I see an awful lot of conversation about this done by technologists and architects and IT nerds and people that I can hold conversations with that you guys probably don't even know exist other than peripherally. And yet we aren't, as a community, having these discussions.
But you could disbar a doctor, but not an AI.
How do you disbar, Newton or whatever his name, Watson, not Newton, sorry.
So that actually brings up one of the general questions for all of you, and that is, we live in uncertainty, and yet AI, genomics is all predicated on a certain degree of assumptions of certainty. And I'll start with you with that. The question I have is, how do we deal with uncertainty with these new technologies?
Genomics is not about determinism. I've had my genome sequenced. I know what I'm at risk of or increased risk of. I still look both ways when I cross the road, because when that bus comes out and wipes me, although there is a gene for high-risk behaviour and certain variants do increase the likelihood of having a violent or accidental death, look, we build probability models into our work. We are wise and humble enough to know we don't know everything. We know there's a large amount of presumed knowledge that will rapidly change in coming years, and we try and put those cautionary safeguards into our reports and our interpretation. And it also doesn't change the practice of medicine. At the end of the day, again, in our current paradigm, I'm I'm in the laboratory available to consult with the clinician who refers the patient or the sample to me. It's a dialogue and a communication exercise. And sometimes you very confidently and politely learn that your diagnosis was not correct and extra information was not available to you, and from that you improve. It's not a deterministic process. You don't know the date of your death by having your genome, other than it probably will be in under 200 years.
That's very disappointing to hear, actually. John, uncertainty in the way that we are working with electronic records, do you think that uncertainty and variability are well catered for?
Look, I think the question was specifically about AI, and AI is the epitome of dealing with uncertainty, actually. It's about as analog as you can get in terms of something written in a digital environment. And I think there might be some mixing up of the differences between non-AI based algorithmic absolutism in computer software versus the very hazy of AI. And one thing I would suggest is that I don't know if everybody agrees with me in this, but in medicine I felt there's an awful lot of things going on in the medical therapeutic milieu that we don't have in textbooks and we don't learn in med school or even by witnessing and practice. And you know, some talk about the laying on of hands and the therapeutic touch and the healing hands and the benefit of a conversation, the placebo effect. There's a whole lot of different terms for it. But I think there's a lot going on that we don't know about, and it's one of the reasons you can explain why people are so interested in alternative medicine, that they still get value out of that even though there's no scientifically provable connection. The interesting thing is that AI will see all of that as well. Because of the way it's engineered, it can see those influences even if we don't know why they exist or how they exist. So it, in a sense, is more uncertainty-based than our own brains. So I think I'd probably dispute the claim that AI is, in fact, about certainty. But you've probably had more experience than me with AI, Peter. So
I think the big advances in AI and robotics over the last decade or two have come from embracing uncertainty and actually representing it formally in the algorithm, and reasoning about uncertainty. I've got two uncertain results. How do I smash those together to get another result? And what's the certainty that I have about that result derived from uncertain results? In robotics, this is particularly important because the robot's perception of the world comes from different sensory modalities, and you always get an imperfect representation of the world. You know, from your eyes, from your ears, there's error. And so we've made greatest progress by not trying to sweep that under the carpet, embrace it, and deal with it. It's very, very powerful.
Well, thank you all very much. I think the fact that so many people have stayed behind, and I'd like to thank very much our presenters for staying behind, shows how much their enthusiasm for, or curiosity perhaps is a better word, for what may well be. And today we've actually been talking about things that are here now changing how we work within our health system. But what I think we have all heard from our guests is that the pace of change is not going to slow. It's going to accelerate. The power of AI, the change in the way that we record information and use information, the changes in the minutiae, if you like, of information included in genetics, and yet the power of that is really going to have to change how we as physicians work with our patients and with our healthcare team. And we must not forget that as physicians, we are part of the healthcare team. And last but not least, how we work with the patients themselves and the change in the knowledge that is currently occurring amongst patients. I think this has been a really exciting session, and I think that everyone would agree that all of our speakers have been thought-provoking, have been very interesting, very engaging, and I'm actually very pleased to have met all three of them, and I'd like everyone to join with me in thanking them for this great session.